Chloe Swarbrick.
Emia, e tautoko ana ia I ngā kōrero me ngā mahi katoa a tōna kāwanatanga.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, and particularly around Budget 2025, which is all about growing the economy to create jobs and help Kiwis get ahead. Mr Speaker, the government's economic plan is working by stopping wasteful spending. Inflation is down, interest rates are falling. Our economy is expected to grow on average 2.7%, and that means 240,000 new jobs being created in the next 4 years, and most importantly, wages growing faster than inflation. Mr Speaker, this is a government that's proud of what it's doing to get New Zealand back on track.
Why did the government not budget for its own increased KiwiSaver employer contributions as the John Key and Bill English National Government did when they made similar KiwiSaver changes in 2011?
Because we think we can fund that quite adequately through baselines.
Does he accept that if the increased KiwiSaver employer contribution costs must be met out of agency baselines, driving wage growth lower than otherwise, and the cost will be represented in the next budget, then, for all intents and purposes, this is a predictable cost which the government has failed to budget for?
I just disagree completely. This is a government that makes sure we get maximum value for money out of every dollar that we spend. And we expect each and every year to be looking at the total pool of expenditure, not just the layer cake of new spending, but the total spend that happens on a portfolio. We expect that to be worked over really hard to make sure we're getting maximum value for money.
Is the Prime Minister there saying that he did not work really hard through the employer increased contributions to KiwiSaver that the government is now liable for?
No, I'm just saying we're very comfortable that they'll be taken out of baseline.
Does the Prime Minister disagree with the Treasury when it says in the Budget Economic and Fiscal Update that, quote, we have assumed that employers will offset the majority, that is 80% of their higher contributions via lower than otherwise wage increases?
Well, I just say to the member, the feedback that we have had around government contributions is that people understand that we are increasing contribution rates for employers and employees. That's a good pathway for New Zealand to be on. And whether I look at an 18-year-old on minimum wage, whether I look at a 30-year-old on the average wage, typically it looks like they'll have 25% bigger retirement balances. Increasing the employer-employee contribution is good because it makes New Zealanders wealthier. They have bigger retirement balances.
Supplementary.
A supplementary question, the Honourable Nicola Willis.
Does the Prime Minister agree with the late Sir Honourable Michael Cullen, who said at the introduction of compulsory employer contributions to KiwiSaver that, quote, the government recognises that over time employer contributions may effectively form part of the wage negotiation process, which will be for employers and employees to mutually agree?
That's right, yes.
When the Prime Minister says he's going for growth, per Treasury's own advice, why is this growth at the expense of wage increases for New Zealanders?
Well, I am very proud that since this coalition government was formed, in every single quarter we have wages growing faster than inflation. And that was just not the case under a Labour Greens government before. It is under this government. We take that very seriously. And when we look at the projected forecasts out of this budget, we see wages continuing to grow faster than inflation. We see low levels of inflation. We see 2.7% average growth rate over the 4-year period. 240,000 new jobs being created because all the parties on this side of the House in this coalition government believe in growth, growth, growth. And in a year where we are going for growth,
have a clear plan to deliver. I have 3 priorities for our economy: growth, growth and growth.
Question number 2, the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Prime Minister, does he stand by all of his government's statements and actions?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr Speaker, especially in education, where our government is delivering the most significant investment in learning support in a generation to better support Kiwi kids and to make sure they thrive at school. This means more teacher aid hours, it means more learning support coordinators and earlier intervention to ensure that our kids are getting the tailored help they need and that teachers have more time to teach the basics brilliantly.
Supplementary. Does he stand by his pre-election commitment to give Kiwi families with kids $250 a fortnight in tax cuts without cutting frontline public services or increasing borrowing? If so, how many families are actually receiving the full $250 a fortnight he promised them?
I don't have the numbers with me, but I am very proud of what we have done to lower tax rates for working New Zealanders. And I just say on this side of the House, this coalition government cares about working New Zealanders, and that's why our tax relief plan, the first in 14 years, was of huge benefit to many New Zealanders and appreciated by working New Zealanders.
Supplementary.
Just a moment. Just interjections are supposed to be rare and reasonable, not commentaries from your seat. The Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
So why can't Nicola Willis or the IRD identify one single family who have received the full $250 family boost that he promised them?
Well, I just encourage the member to put his question in writing and we can come back with a more fulsome answer. But what I can tell you out there is that lower middle income working New Zealanders who were let down over something like 32 months with wages growing slower than actually inflation are very, very grateful that under this government, with the parties in this coalition government, we are making sure that we deliver for low and middle income working New Zealanders. These were the people Labor used to care about, but not anymore.
Supplementary. So how does an average $100 a week cut to the accommodation supplement for those working hard to make ends meet by taking in boarders help those low-income families with the cost of living crisis?
Well, that isn't unreasonable, that we would expect that if you're earning income from boarding or from subletting, essentially, that income is considered in your calculation. That's a fair thing.
Supplementary question. Why has this government cancelled pay parity for early childhood education teachers, a profession dominated by women who were already reeling from the fact that his government unilaterally cancelled without notice their active pay equity claim?
Pay parity still exists in ECE, but all we're doing is making sure that the owners of ECE establishments get to set the pay rates, not the government.
Supplementary question. So how can he claim that pay parity still exists if it doesn't exist?
Well, exactly as I said, it does exist, but the question is, we don't believe that just because you've got a qualification and a master's degree that you should be paid more and mandated to pay more than someone who's got 25 years of experience in ECE. That's up to owners to determine what they pay their workers so that they can work out what they charge to their consumers.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. How will early childhood education...
Supplementary question, Ronald Winston-Peters.
Could I ask the Prime Minister, if a boarder is paying more than $100 per week, aren't you better off as a consequence of this simple mathematical equation?
Well, I just think it's entirely reasonable that actually any income generated through renting or sending out to a boarder, that income's included in any calculation that the government offers support for.
Supplementary. How will early childhood education services pay any teacher salary increases when the government's offered them only 0.5% funding increase? Or does he expect them to pass that cost on to parents in the form of higher fees?
Well, again, we're leaving that for owners of ECE establishments to work out their cost base, to work out what they pay their workers and ultimately what they charge their consumers. That is normal business practice.
Honourable Marama Davidson.
Ki te Peremia, e tautoko ana ia I ngā kōrero me ngā mahi katoa a tōna kāwanatanga.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, and especially around driving economic growth. That's why our government is proud to have introduced Investment Boost, a tax incentive which makes it easier for tradies and farmers and small business owners to invest in new assets, to increase productivity and lift wages. It's only through a strong, growing economy that we can create the jobs, lift wages and help New Zealanders get ahead and deal with the cost of living.
Is he concerned then that the Treasury's forecasts in his budget found that child poverty rates are set to remain overall at their current levels until at least 2029, meaning tens of thousands of tamariki will continue to grow up in conditions that will undermine their chances of a healthy, productive life?
Well, there is always more for us to do around improving and fighting child poverty. But the way we do that is we run a really good economy. And that means cutting the wasteful spending. It means lowering inflation, lowering interest rates, getting the economy growing so that people have great jobs and great work. And that's what we're doing.
Is he concerned then that Treasury forecasts found the two primary policy changes noted in his budget's child poverty report, which is lifting the Working for Families threshold and changes to the accommodation supplement, will not have a statistically significant impact on child poverty measures?
Well, I'm actually proud of this budget because what we're doing is growing our economy so that we can lift wages for all. We are making sure that we actually have targeted cost of living support for working for families. That is helpful for low and middle income working families. But importantly, it's getting the macroeconomics right. It's about managing this economy well, and that's what this coalition government is doing. We're getting on, fixing up the mess left behind and dealing with it.
Does he agree with Dr. Bonnie Robinson, Director of the Salvation Army's Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit, who said, quote, "This budget shows a government content with maintaining the status quo in terms of child poverty. But when the status quo means children living in cars and families relying on food banks, that is simply not good enough," end quote. And if not, why not?
Well, I think it's a bit rich coming from the member whose government, that last Labor Greens government, had 23,000 more kids go into poverty. This is a government that's working incredibly hard and has prioritised economic growth so that we can actually help all families do well in New Zealand. We're proud of what we've got going on here. We have got rid of the wasteful spending. We've got inflation down, lowering the cost of living. We have wages growing faster than inflation every quarter of this government, unlike the previous one.
Can he explain how cutting financial support for around 13,000 low-income households who have boarders, often family, to make ends meet, is consistent with a commitment to reduce child poverty?
Well, it's all about fairness and making sure that a full assessment, when an assessment's undertaken to get support from the taxpayer, that all sources of revenue are considered in that. That's an anomaly that we're fixing.
Does he agree with economist Shamubel Yaqub that this budget is, quote, anti-young people, anti-poor people and anti-brown people, end quote? Or is this a mischaracterisation of cuts to ECE funding, cuts to young people's benefits, or removing targeted funding for Māori housing?
I disagree completely, and as the member talked on housing, I think this is a government that's incredibly proud of its housing record. We have house prices stable, we have rents stable, we have taken 7,000 people off the social housing register, and importantly, most importantly, we've taken 2,100 kids out of motel emergency accommodation, and they're in great homes with social housing providers and with KO.